Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Air Raid Saturdays College Football YouTube channel. I am your host, Justin Perez, and today we're going to be nearing the end of our conference predictions heading into the upcoming 2023 college football season. So we did 8 of the conferences that are still around in college football currently, and now we're going to be doing the last 2 conferences this week, starting off with the Mountain West Conference. There's 12 schools to get through here. You already know the deal. There's no divisions in this conference, so I'll be going through alphabetical order through each of these teams and giving my predictions for what I at least expect heading into the season. So the Mountain West, we're gonna start off with the Air Force Falcons. Now Air Force is head coached by Troy Calhoun, who's in his 17th year at Air Force, and he ends up having a 121-78 record as of right now. And last season Air Force finished with a 10-3 record and 5-3 in Mountain West Conference play, and they won the Armed Forces Bowl against Baylor. Now, when looking at their schedule, they have traditional rivalry games with Army and Navy that fill out their non-conference schedule, but they also have opponents in non-conference schedule such as Robert Morris from the FCS and Sam Houston from the Conference USA. They will be one of the Mountain West top contenders, and their realistic expectations should be from anywhere from 8 to 10 wins. Now, as far as how I see the season playing out, I see Air Force winning 3 of their first 4 games. Those wins will come against Robert Morris on September the 2nd, and then on a couple Friday night contests to open up Conference USA play against Utah State and San Jose State. Then they got to play Sam Houston in Houston, Texas, which is considered a neutral site game, but Sam Houston is located in Texas. I think that even though Air Force will be the favorite in this one, I think that Sam Houston will pull off an upset to start their FBS play in college football. So I think they'll lose that one. And then after the San Jose State game, I see Air Force losing to San Diego State to drop to 3-2 before the bye week. But then during the second half of the season, I see everything working pretty well. I think they'll beat Wyoming on October the 14th. They'll lose to Navy in one of their rivalry games. They'll lose to Navy on the road as one of their non-conference games. Remember that Navy plays in the American Athletic Conference. So they'll lose to Navy. But then I think they'll pick up 4 consecutive wins against Colorado State, Army versus Army in Denver, which is considered a neutral site game, but really it's a home game for Air Force. Then I also see them beating Hawaii and UNLV, as both those teams are not going to be major factors in the conference championship race. And if I'm being honest, Air Force is a better program, or is a better team at least as of now, than Hawaii and Air Force. So I got Air Force picking up those 2 wins, and then I see them losing on a Friday night on the road to Boise State to end the year at 8-4 and 6-2 in the Mountain West. So I have them getting 8 wins, but if you look at their schedule, the Sam Houston game is winnable, and definitely the Navy game is winnable. Also, the San Diego State game is a game that can be considered a possibility for a win, as well as the Boise State game. However, I just think that Air Force is a little bit lesser of a good ball club compared to San Diego State and Boise State. San Diego State, they're gonna have that amazing defense that's gonna shut opponents down, and then you have Boise State, that's always been the class of this conference, that should beat Air Force. So I see Air Force finishing 8-4 and 6-2 in the Mountain West. All right, now the next team we have is the Boise State Broncos, who have really been the most dominant team in this conference for a long time now. They're head coached by Andy Avalos, who's in his 3rd year at Boise State. He has a 17-9 record. Last season, Avalos led the Broncos to a 10-4 mark and an 8-1 mark in Mountain West Conference play. Now, unfortunately, they lost the Mountain West Championship game to Fresno State, but they did win the Frisco Bowl against North Texas, who ended up losing the Conference USA title to UTSA. So Boise State at least ended their season off on the right foot by winning a bowl game. Now, when looking at their schedule, they have 2 tough road tilts against Washington from the Pac-12 and Memphis from the American Athletic Conference, and they're a pretty good team. And they also host UCF from the Big 12 Conference. However, they're still considered by many to be the top team in the Mountain West Conference, and should be vying for a conference title. Boise State, over the last several years, they've been one of the best group of 5 teams in all of college football, but due to several factors, they haven't been able to get the job fully done, whether they've lost in Mountain West Conference title games, whether they failed to got there, whether they failed to win a game that they need to win. You know, they've come up short over the last few years in several different areas, but now should be the time where they're ready to take that next step, and I believe that this is the year where Boise State finally becomes the champions of the Mountain West Conference. Now, my realistic expectations for them can be anywhere from 11 to can be anywhere from 8 to 11 wins. And the way I see the season playing out, I see them losing the first 2 games of the season to Washington on the road on September 2nd and to UCF at home on September the 9th. But then I see them winning their next 5 contests, starting off with an easy win at home against North Dakota from FCS. The North Dakota Fighting Hawks now, I think they're called. They used to be called the Fighting Sioux. But, you know, they'll win that game. Then I see them beating San Diego State on a Friday night in Snapdragon Stadium. That game could determine what goes forward throughout the rest of the year in the Mountain West Conference. So, you know, that's a key game, but I think Boise State will win that one. Then I think they'll beat Memphis on the road. They'll take down San Jose State at home to kick off, or not kick off, but in their second conference game. And they'll take down Colorado State on the road before the bye week comes. So they'll be at 5-2 heading into the bye week. Then coming out of the bye week, I see them losing to Wyoming. Now I know Boise State's a better team than Wyoming, but I feel like that, you know, the Broncos will at least have a hiccup somewhere on the schedule in conference play. And I think that the Wyoming game is going to be one that catches them off guard just because they're coming off a bye week. Even though they have more time to prepare, oh my god, even though they have way more time to prepare, excuse me, I misspoke the last time. Even though they have more time to prepare for this game, it's also possible that they could, you know, find themselves slacking a little bit or, you know, lagging offensively in this game. And I think that they'll start off a little bit slow, and that'll be too much for them to overcome, and they'll lose to Wyoming. And also, Wyoming's a pretty good ball club as well, so that it's possible they could lose that game. But after that loss, I see them closing out the season on a 4-game winning streak by beating Fresno State to open up November, then taking down New Mexico easily at home, then beating Utah State on the road, and then ending the season at 9-3 and 7-1 overall in the conference with the Friday night win versus Air Force at home. So I see Boise State finishing the season at 9-3 and 7-1 in the Mountain West. Now, I think they can get up to 11 wins. Obviously, that Wyoming game on October the 28th is extremely winnable, but also it is possible that they do beat one of their 2 opening season opponents, either against Washington or UCF. I will not be surprised if Washington loses to Boise State or if UCF loses to Boise State, because the Broncos are just that damn good. But you know, overall 9-3 and 7-1 in the Mountain West is a good mark for Boise State, and that's where I see them finishing. All right, now let's move on over to one of the conference's less successful teams, the Colorado State Rams. Now, Colorado State, they're head coached by Jay Norvell, who's in his second year at CSU, and last season was a disaster. I mean, Jay Norvell is a pretty successful coach, or has been. But last year was, I think, probably the worst year he's had in his career. I didn't check, but I'm sure it's up there. As his Colorado State Rams finished 3-9 during 3-9 during the season and 3-5 in Mountain West play. Now, although last year's season was pretty bad and rough, Colorado State definitely has enough talent to where they can definitely show some improvement this season. When looking at their non-conference schedule, it's almost the same as last year. They have, you know, Washington State, Middle Tennessee, and Colorado as their opponents, along with Utah Tech from the FCS. But that's nothing to really glamour on about. So you know, so they have Washington State, Middle Tennessee, and Colorado, who's their biggest rival in the Rocky Mountain Showdown. Then they also host 3 of the conference's top teams against, and those games are against Boise State, Air Force, and San Diego State. But they go on the road for a majority of the other quality teams in the conference that they have to face. And realistic expectations, I would say this team can get anywhere from 3 to 6 wins. Now, I don't think that Colorado State will finish with another 3-win season. Like I said, I think that Jay Norvell somewhat implemented his system successfully. So I think that he'll at least get some improvement out of his team this season. And I think they'll be able to squeeze a couple more wins. Now, as far as how I see their schedule playing out, they got to start the season at home against my beloved Washington State Cougars. And even though they're hosting that game, I think that Washington State's going to win that game probably by at least 10 points. So, obviously, they'll lose to Washington State. Then they have an early bye week, and they got to play the next 11 games in consecutive weeks, which is crazy. I don't know how college teams can do that, but they'll lose to Washington State. They have a bye week, and then they have to go on a 2-game road trip to get through conference, to get through non-conference play. They got to play Colorado in the Rocky Mountain Showdown in Boulder, and then they also got to play Middle Tennessee on the road. I think they'll lose both of those games to drop to 0-3. But then I see them picking up the 2 wins over the next 2 weeks to get to 2-3. They'll beat Utah Tech easily on September the 30th, and then they'll get by Utah State on the road to open up conference play. Now, this is the kicker here. In October and in early November, they have several tough teams that they got to play, including Boise State, Air Force, Wyoming, San Diego State, and they also got to play a decent UNLV team on October the 21st. I think they'll drop the Boise State game. I think Boise State's gonna beat them rather easily. I think they'll get by UNLV on the 21st, but then they'll close out October and open up November with 3 consecutive losses to drop them to 3-7. So they're out of bowl contention. They'll lose to Air Force. Then they'll drop the Friday night game on the road against Wyoming, and then they'll also lose to San Diego State on November 11th. However, I see them finishing the season on a bright spot as they play 2 of the worst teams in Conference USA. I always get things mixed up, but I meant to say they play 2 of the teams that are considered to be 2 of the worst in the Mountain West Conference this year. They host Nevada on November the 18th, and they play Hawaii on the road on November the 25th. I think they'll win both of those games, and they'll end the year at 5-7. As far as the extra potential win they could get, it's possible that they could beat maybe Wyoming. I don't think they'll beat San Diego State, Air Force, or Boise State. I think Boise State, Air Force, and San Diego State are way more talented than Colorado State, and I think that'll play a factor. But, and also that Washington State game I would just throw out. But the Colorado game is probably winnable. The Middle Tennessee game can be winnable. And like I said, the Wyoming game is definitely not a game that you can't scratch off entirely either. So Colorado State could make a bowl game this season, but it's going to take a lot of pushing. It's going to take a big push to get to that 6th win. And I think they'll finish the year 1 win below bowl eligibility and end the year at 5-7 and 3-5 in the Mountain West Conference. All right, now let's transition over to one of the conference's better teams. So we go from talking about 2 conference contenders to a team that's not a contender, and now we go back to talking about one of the contenders again. Now we're talking about the Fresno State Bulldogs, who are led by a head coach, Jeff Tedford, who's in his 2nd year at Fresno State. Last season, in his rookie campaign at FSU or at Fresno State, whatever, the Bulldogs finished 10-4. They went 8-1 in Mountain West play. They beat Boise State for the Mountain West Conference Championship, and they beat Washington State in the Jimmy Kimmel Los Angeles Bowl, I believe that's what it's called. Obviously, Fresno State, they lost several of their top players. I believe they also lost, their top running back. I can't remember his name right now. And they also lost Jay Kaner, who was their quarterback. However, even though they lost a lot of their key pieces, they're still considered to be one of the conference's best teams because they still have enough talent to where they can contend. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if Fresno State was able to find itself in a position where they can compete once again for a conference title. We're looking at their non-conference slate. They have road trips against 2 Power 5 conference opponents. They got to take on Purdue from the Big Ten, and they got to take on Arizona State from the Pac-12. But those aren't that tough game. They're tough road trips, but they're definitely winnable games, as both Purdue and Arizona State are entering pure rebuild mode. and they're not going to be very good this season. So, so those two games are winnable for sure. And like I said, even though they lost several of their key players, they should be one of the few heavy favorites to win the Mountain West Conference still. As far as my realistic expectations are concerned, I could see them anywhere getting from 7 to 10 wins. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's go through their schedule first. Obviously, like I said, they got to start the season off against Purdue from the Big Ten on September the 2nd. I think they'll lose that game, but it'll be a close contest. Then I see them beating Eastern Washington from the FCS rather easily at home on September 9th before they drop another close one to Arizona State on September the 16th. However, they end non-conference play with the blowout against Kent State at home, and then they start their conference play with another blowout game that I see happening, and that's against Nevada on September the 30th. And then I see them winning their next two games after that to start the season at 5-2 overall during the season. I think they'll get by Wyoming, and then they'll beat Utah State on a Friday night to enter the bye week at 5-2 overall. Then after the bye week, I see them getting at 6-2, so they become bowl eligible after a win against UNLV. Even though UNLV is not considered to be one of the top teams in this conference, they can do some damage, and I think they have enough talent to where they can pull off an upset or two against one of the Mountain West better teams. So I think this game will be closer than expected, but I still think that Fresno State will come out on top. Then I see them losing the next two games to Boise State and San Jose State, which automatically should drop them out of Mountain West Conference title game contention. But then they'll beat New Mexico rather easily on November the 18th. And then I think they'll lose to San Diego State on the road on November 25th to end the season at 7-5 and 5-3 in the Mountain West. Now, as far as the other games they could win, like I said, I gave them 7 wins. But like I said, those Purdue and Arizona games, even though they're a Group of 5 school playing against Power 5 schools, I wouldn't throw those games out and say they're automatic losses. I mean, this isn't like Fresno State's not playing Alabama or Georgia here. They're playing two teams who are considered to be two of the Power 5 conference's worst teams heading into the season. Purdue and Arizona State, they're entering rebuild mode, and I don't think that Fresno State will automatically get outclassed in any of those games. So those can be two potential wins. I think it's more likely that they lose to at least one of those opponents, but it's possible they could beat both of those opponents. And then I also think it's possible that they could beat one of the conference's heavy favorites. I think if you're asking me, and those losses to Boise State, San Jose State, and San Diego State, if you ask me, if there's a game that can be switched to a win, I think that San Jose State game on November 11th can become a win. The Boise State and San Diego State games, I don't think Fresno State's going to win, because I think both of those two teams have a little bit more talent than Fresno State, but it's still possible that they pull off one of those games either. So that's where I see Fresno State finishing the year. 7-5 and 5-3 in the Mountain West. Alright, now we're going to move over to the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, who are head coached by former Hawaii quarterbacking legend Timmy Chang. Timmy Chang is in his second year as Hawaii head coach, and last year did not go very well for him. Hawaii went 3-10 last year. They played 13 games, and they went 2-6 in Mountain West play. Just a quick disclaimer. Hawaii is only the second team as of right now that I discovered that's playing a 13-game season. The other is New Mexico State, which I covered in my Conference USA vid, which you can check out in the upper right-hand card. So they have a 13-game season, and their 5-game non-conference slate includes road trips to Vanderbilt and Oregon, and they also host Stanford, New Mexico State, and Albany. They will be at the bottom of the Mountain West Conference to many, but there should be somewhat of an improvement from last season. And as you can tell by my projected record on the bottom of the left side of the screen, you could tell that I don't think they're going to be as bad as what people are saying. I know Hawaii's been pretty bad for a few years now, and last season was terrible. But I think Timmy Chang is going to do a better job in his second year. I mean, last year they were able to win 10 games with a team that really wasn't all that functional. Functional. I don't know the name. I don't know how to say that word, man. But you know what I mean. But anyway, Hawaii, they were insufficient on both sides of the ball last season. But now, they should be better, especially offensively. Because if you know anything about Timmy Chang And Hawaii, when Timmy Chang played for Hawaii back in the day, all they did was throw the ball, and throw some more on offense. And that's sort of that's the type of offense that he's trying to instill at Hawaii. Now last year it didn't really work as they struggled to convert a lot of third downs and they struggled to have a consistent, efficient passing game. But this year, second year usually things sort of get better, and I think that things will get better this season, especially offensively. And their defense has a couple of pretty good players who are led by Peter Manuma, who's one of the better safeties in the Mountain West this season. Their secondary should be one of the better secondaries in the Mountain West defensively. So I think they'll be much improved compared to last season. Now, as far as how I see them starting out the season, I see them starting out 0-2, losing to Vanderbilt in Week 0 on August 26th, and then on Friday night to start the season, or in Week 1 of the season, against Stanford. They host Stanford and Vanderbilt. These games could be a little bit more closer than what people are expecting. I'm not ready to say that Hawaii is going to get blown out in any of these games because Vanderbilt and Stanford are just as bad as Hawaii in their own conferences. So I think these games will be closer than what people are expecting. If you watched my my betting line predictions or my point spread picks, then I said that as well too. So I think Vanderbilt and the Stanford games will be close, but I think that Hawaii will lose both those games. Now they also have Albany. The Albany game, they'll win easily to get to 1-2, and then they'll lose the next 2 games against Oregon and New Mexico State to drop to 1-4. Now, when they start conference play, I think they'll get a win on the road against UNLV. I think that's a game that Hawaii could win, so they got 2 wins before the bye week. Then they lose to San Diego State, but then I see them picking up 3 consecutive key wins against New Mexico, San Jose State, and Nevada from late October to early November. Now, the New Mexico and Nevada games, I think they'll win. I think Hawaii is a way better football team than both New Mexico and Nevada, but I think that Hawaii is talented enough to where they can pull off an upset against one of the conference's better teams, and I think that San Jose State will be the victim of a potential upset, so I see them beating San Jose State as well. But then I see them losing their last 3 games of the season. They get to 5-5 for the season, right? But then I see them losing their last 3 games of the season to end the year at 5-8 and 4-4 in the Mountain West. They'll lose to Air Force, they'll lose to Wyoming on the road, and I think they'll lose in a close battle to Colorado State to end the year at 5-8 and 4-4 in the Mountain West. As far as my realistic expectation is concerned, I think this is probably the weirdest realistic expectations meter that I've made for a team, because again, Hawaii's one of those teams that they're not going to be an amazing ball club at all, but that they're talented enough to where anything could happen. They're one of the 50-50 teams that I call it. They could be pretty bad, but they could also be pretty decent as well, and I'm leaning towards the more decent side for Hawaii. Of course, they'll still have a losing season, but I think they're improved enough now to where they can win more football games and improve their record overall and become somewhat more respectable in the Mountain West Conference. So 5-8 and 4-4 in the Mountain West Conference play for Hawaii. Alright, our 6th team we're going to be talking about, and that's the Nevada Wolfpack. Now, Nevada was one of the worst teams, or if not the worst team in the Mountain West Conference last season. Led by second-year head coach Ken Wilson, the Wolfpack finished 2-10 and winless in the Mountain West Conference, losing all 8 of their conference games. Now, Hawaii. Nevada, I almost said Hawaii. Nevada, again, they don't have a lot of high expectations this season, but, I read through several previews of them, and people are not counting out that this could be a bounce-back year for the Nevada Wolfpack. They were one of the better programs in this conference for several years, and then things just fell off a cliff a couple years ago. Now, as far as this season is concerned, they have to face USC on the road, and they got to play Kansas at home. Both of those games you should just throw out the window. There's no way they're winning any of those games. And they still are expected to be one of, if not the worst team in the Mountain West Conference this year. I'm leaning towards that. I don't think that they're going to be that. I don't think they're going to be the worst team in the conference, because there's another team that we're going to talk about just soon that is absolutely fucking terrible. And excuse my language, but there's really no other way to say it. Like, the next team that I'm gonna talk about is absolutely terrible. But we'll get to them coming up next. Let's focus on Nevada. Now, Nevada, they're not that good of a football team, but realistic expectations wise, again, they're another one of those teams, just like Hawaii. They're one of those teams that they don't have enough talent to pull out a phenomenal dominant season. But if everything goes right and if they get all the bounces, they do have enough talent to where they could potentially make it back to the bowl season. So I see them getting anywhere from 2 to 6 wins, which again is a pretty wide difference for my realistic expectation meter. But 2 to 6 wins it is. Now, going through their schedule, I think they'll lose to USC in a blowout. I don't got to talk about that at all. Then I think they'll beat Idaho rather easily at home to start their home schedule. I think they'll beat Idaho from the FCS. And I plan on doing a video on Idaho one day talking about their downfall. But that's a different topic for another day. Just throwing it out there. But yeah, I think they'll beat Idaho. Then I think even though they're hosting the Kansas Jayhawks, they'll lose that one in a blowout too. I don't see Nevada getting anywhere close against USC or Kansas, especially that USC game. Expect for them to be absolutely demolished by USC. So they'll start the season at 1-2. Then they'll beat Texas State on September the 23rd to even their record at 2-2 before conference play. But then conference play opens up with a loss on the road to Fresno State on September the 30th. I don't see them winning that game, so they drop to 2-3. Then they have a bye week. Then they lose their next 2 games after the bye week to UNLV and San Diego State. Again, UNLV, that game they could win, but the games against Fresno State and San Diego State, I don't know, man. I think Fresno State and San Diego State have way too much talent on their rosters for Nevada to deal with this season. I don't have much confidence at all that Nevada is going to be able to at least beat one of the best teams in the conference. Unlike Hawaii, I don't think Nevada has that much talent or enough talent to where they could find themselves in a position to where they can upset one of the better teams in the conference. So I see them losing to San Diego State and UNLV and Fresno State. But then I think they'll beat New Mexico State to get their 3rd win of the season. And then I see them dropping to 3-8. Or 3-8. And then I see them losing to Utah State and Hawaii. So the Utah State game they'll definitely lose, and then I see them losing to Colorado State and Wyoming to end the season at 3-9 and 1-7 in the Mountain West Conference. I just made a mistake. I realized that I marked the Utah State game as a win on my screen when really I should have marked that as a loss. So I'll go back and I'll change that. That's why I took a little bit of time to process everything. But yeah, 3-9. And 1-7 in the Mountain West Conference for Nevada. I just don't have much faith in them this season, and I think it's going to be another rough year for the Wolfpack. But at least they'll get a win better than last season. So 3-9 and 1-7 in the Mountain West for the Nevada Wolfpack. All right, now we're halfway through, where we finished the first half of this conference. Now let's transition into the next half of this conference, and that's the New Mexico Lobos. Now, New Mexico. Remember how like a few minutes ago, how I mentioned how there's another team that's just as bad, if not worse, than Nevada? Yeah, it's this team right here. New Mexico has been so bad throughout the Danny Gonzalez tenure, and Danny Gonzalez is still the head coach at New Mexico. He's at his 4th year over there in Albuquerque, and he, as of right now, he has a 7-24 record. Over the last 2 seasons, not over the last 2 seasons. Last season, New Mexico finished with a terrible 2-10 record and 0-8 in the Mountain West. They got to face 2 non-conference opponents, 2 tough non-conference opponents in Texas A&M and New Mexico State. And, just forget about, assuming anything, because this team will be the cellar dweller of the Mountain West Conference. I just don't see at all how this team can be competitive. Now, sorry, I had to cut the audio off for a second, but now I'm back. So, I know it might sound a little weird here, but I had to cut the audio off for a quick second. But now, let's continue on with New Mexico. So, like I said, I don't think they'll be really competitive this season. Realistic expectation-wise, I would say this team can get anywhere from 2 to 4 wins. This team really is not that good, and I do not expect them to be a challenge at all in this conference. It's just a it's just been a mess at New Mexico for a while now, and I don't think it's gonna get better anytime soon. The two games that I have New Mexico winning are against Texas Tech on September the 9th and against UMass on September the 23rd. I personally do not think that this team is going to get any other wins outside of that. Non-conference wise, they got to play, like I said, Texas A&M and New Mexico State. The Texas A&M game you could just throw out the window. There is no way in hell that New Mexico is going to beat Texas A&M. So you throw that out. And then the New Mexico State game, again, even I know I've been really high on New Mexico State, but that's because New Mexico State is a good football team. Now, this game, New Mexico could win, but I think that the Aggies will prevail over the Lobos in that one. Then after the UMass win, because UMass is the worst team in college football, and this is something that everybody knows. But after the UMass win, I see this team losing out the rest of the way. I see this team losing their next 8 games to finish the season at 2-10, and they're gonna go winless again in Mountain West Conference play. So they'll basically have the same record as last year, the same results, same overall record, the same conference record. I don't see how New Mexico can beat any one of these teams. I mean, maybe they could beat Hawaii or Nevada, but that's a big maybe though. I don't have that much confidence in New Mexico that they're going to be able to take down those two teams. We talked about Hawaii a little while ago, and I think that Hawaii is going to be much improved this season with Jimmy Chang. And we just talked about Nevada, and even though Nevada is not a good football team, I think they're better than New Mexico right now. New Mexico is just a complete, utter disaster right now, and it's going to be like that for at least another year this season. And I wouldn't be surprised if New Mexico doesn't show any improvement this year. I would not be surprised if Danny Gonzalez gets fired from his job. This is his 4th year now at the helm, where he's trying to make this work, and it just has not worked at all. So, and I don't think it's going to work this year at all either. So I project New Mexico to finish 2-10 and 0-8 in the Mountain West Conference. All right, now let's transition to the San Diego State Aztecs. So we talked about 3 teams that are not really going to be a factor, and now we'll move on to a team that will be a factor in determining this year's conference champion. We have the San Diego State Aztecs, who are head coached by Brady Hoke, and Hoke is in his 4th year at SDSU, and he has a 36-24 record heading into this year. Last season was a bit of a disappointment for San Diego State, as they dealt with a bunch of inconsistencies, as they finished the year 7-6 and 5-3 in the Mountain West, and they also lost the Hawaii Bowl to Middle Tennessee. However, this year should be massively different, and this should be a massive improvement for the Aztecs, and they should be considered one of this conference's top teams heading into this year. They have so much talent on both sides of the ball that it's almost impossible to see that San Diego State will have a year like last year. I don't think they'll go through the same inconsistencies, and I think they'll get a little bit more production out of the positions where they need it the most. Now, they face 2 Pac-12 teams in UCLA and Oregon State, and they also host Ohio, who's a MAC East Division favorite, on Week 0 on August 26th. I think that game is going to be really, really fun to watch. If you haven't checked out my ranking of the top 7 games of Week 0. So they have a tough non-conference schedule. They actually host UCLA as well as Ohio, and then they got to go on the road to Oregon State. But even though they have a really tough non-conference schedule, the conference slate sees SDSU go up against 4 other top teams in the Mountain West. So it's going to be a tough schedule, a potentially tough year for the Aztecs of San Diego State, but I think they'll have a phenomenal year. As far as their conference play goes, I see them losing 3 out of their first 4. I see them losing to Ohio, UCLA, and at Oregon State during the non-conference action. I think they'll pick up a win against Idaho State from the FCS rather easily on September the 2nd, but they'll lose to those 3 other non-conference teams, and then they'll open up conference play with a Friday night loss at home to Boise State. But as you can see here, after that 1-4 start, there's nothing else to worry about for San Diego State as far as my predictions go. I think Aztecs fans will be pleased if they actually see their team get 7 consecutive wins to end the season, which is what I have them doing here. I see them beating Air Force on September the 30th on the road before the bye week to get to 2-4. And then coming out of the bye week, they have a really, really, really favorable schedule the next few weeks, as they got to play Hawaii, Nevada, Utah State, and Colorado State. Now, Hawaii and Nevada, they're better than, so those are going to be wins. Utah State could be a toss-up game. You know, the Utah State game could be a game where, San Diego State, lays an egg and they lose that one, but I don't see that happening. And then I think they'll beat Colorado State rather easily. Again, I think the Utah State games and Colorado State games could be a couple hiccups or a couple bumps in the road for San Diego State, but I don't see how they could lose those games at all. So I give them wins there. And then they end the year with two really tough opponents going on the road against San Jose State on the 18th of November, and then they also got to play Fresno State at home on November the 25th. Even though those two games will be extremely tough for San Diego State, they're going to be dogfights. I do see them pulling off those wins in close contests to end the year at 8-4 and 7-1 in the Mountain West Conference. To me, there is no reason why San Diego State cannot be a top contender in the conference this season. They have the talent, they have the coaching. Now all they got to do is execute, and they could get to the Mountain West Conference title game, which I expect them to do this season. Alright, now we have the San Jose State Spartans, who are head coached by Brent Brennan, who's in his 7th year as Spartans head coach. He has a record of 27-42. He has a record of 27 wins and 42 losses throughout his 7 years there. Now, his tenure started out really rough, but he's been able to get San Jose State in a position where they've never been before. This is by far their most extended run of success since the 1986 and 1987 seasons. And this is the best that they've ever been as a program. This is a program that really isn't in a big market, that really isn't a hotbed, that really isn't all football crazy. But San Jose State has proven to be one of the best and more formidable teams in the Mountain West Conference over the last several years. Last season they won 7-5 and they won 5-3 in the Mountain West before losing the Potato Bowl to Eastern Michigan. They only played 11 regular season games that year. I believe they had a game against New Mexico State that was postponed and then that wasn't rescheduled. So they finished the year 7-5. And now this year, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle because they lose a lot of their top players, and they face two top Pac-12 opponents, as well as Toledo, who's a favorite in the MAC conference this year. So it's a really tough non-conference schedule. But I think that San Jose State will hover above water. I would say that San Jose State has the ability to get from anywhere from 5 to 8 wins during the season. Like I said, they lost a lot of their top returners, they lost a lot of their top players, or a lot of their top production, but they still have enough talent to where they could be, one of the better teams in the conference. They're not going to be in the conference championship game, in my opinion, but they'll definitely be up there. So starting out, I see them losing at USC and versus Oregon State to open up the season. The Oregon State game, they actually host on CBS on Sunday, September 3rd. But I think they'll lose to both Oregon State and USC. But then I see them evening up their record against California Poly from the FCS. And I think they'll pull off a decent upset against Toledo on the road in the Glass Bowl to even their record at 2-2. Then when they open up conference play, I think that San Jose State's going to lay a dud against Air Force. It's a Friday night game. I think that game's going to be somewhat close, but I just don't think that San Jose State's going to pull out a win against San Jose State. I just don't think that San Jose State's going to pull out a win against Air Force, so they'll drop to 2-3. Then they have a bye week, and then they'll lose to Boise State to get to 0-2 in conference play and 2-4. But then I see them winning their next 2 games against New Mexico and against Utah State to get to 4-4, which will make up a do-or-die November. I see them losing in an upset loss to Hawaii before their second bye week. They have 2 bye weeks this season. I see them losing to Hawaii before their second bye week on October the 28th. But heading into November, this is a do-or-die situation for San Jose State if they want to get back to a bowl game, and I think they'll deliver. They have Fresno State, San Diego State, and UNLV. Now, it is possible they could lose 2 of these 3 games, but I think they'll win 2 of these 3 games instead of lose 2 of them. I think they'll beat UNLV in the season finale pretty handily. I think they'll pull ahead late in the 4th quarter, and they'll win that game. But then also, I don't see how they can't beat Fresno State either. I think they'll beat Fresno State to be bowl eligible, but then I think they'll lose to San Diego State on the 18th. So I think San Jose State gets it done. It's going to be a bit of a struggle this year, and it might be a little frustrating for San Jose State fans, but I think they'll have enough talent to stay above water and reach the postseason once again. So I see San Jose State finishing 6-6 and 4-4 in the Mountain West Conference in 2023. All right, now we have the UNLV Rebels, or the University of Nevada at Las Vegas Rebels. The running Rebels are head coached by first-year man Barry Odom, and Barry Odom, I think, was a phenomenal hire. UNLV has tried several different head coaches, whether it's been the hot offensive coordinator or the rising defensive coordinator. They've tried several different head coaches, but they just haven't worked. But I believe that they have finally found their right head coach in Barry Odom, who has experience. He's had some success, and this is his first year at UNLV, and he has a 25-25 career record. He has a lot of he's had some success, and I have confidence that he'll be able to rebuild UNLV. There's no excuse as to why UNLV should not be a successful football program. They're in a big market. They're in Las Vegas. They could give immediate credibility to the Mountain West Conference if they're able to produce and if they're able to win. They have enough where they can entice high school recruits. It's time now for UNLV to get back to a winning culture, get to a consistent winning culture, which they haven't had pretty much in their entire history. So last season they finished 5-7 and 3-5 in the Mountain West. This year could be a little bit worse for UNLV. Again, a new head coach means that they might struggle. Even though there's been some rookie head coaches who have had some success early on in their tenures at specific schools, I don't think that Barry Odom is just going to suddenly pull New Mexico State out of the hat and turn UNLV around in 1 year. They have to play Michigan on the road in Ann Arbor, and they host Vanderbilt in non-conference play. Now, UNLV won't be one of the Mountain West top teams, but they can raise a few eyebrows. Again, last year's 5-7 finish, they had a really hot start to the year with a different head coach. I forgot his name. And then they faltered late. They just needed that one win to get to a bowl game. Now, they have enough talent to where they can raise a few eyebrows, but I don't think it'll be a winning season for them. I think at best they can finish with 6 wins and finish the regular season at 500. Now, as their schedule is concerned, I see them beating Bryant in the first game of the season from the FCS. They won't have trouble at all with the Bryant Bulldogs. But then I think they'll lose to Michigan and Vanderbilt in back-to-back weeks to drop to 1-2. Then, as they finish non-conference play at UTEP, I think they'll beat UTEP on the 23rd of September to get to 2-2 before conference play hits. Now, their conference opener is versus Hawaii on September the 30th, and I think they'll lose to Hawaii. I think Hawaii is more talented offensively, and I think they're going to give UNLV's defense some fits. Even though Barry Odom is a defensive coach and he will make UNLV's defense better, I still think they'll struggle at times during the season, and as a result, I think they'll lose to Hawaii before the bye week. Then I think they'll beat Nevada on October the 14th before they drop the games to Colorado State and Fresno State to drop to 3-6 or 3-5 overall. Excuse me, at 3-5 they'll drop to 3-5 after the Fresno State game. Then they'll pick up a win to improve to 4-5 against the worst team in the conference, in my opinion, and that's New Mexico. But then I see them losing their last 3 games of the season to Wyoming, Air Force, and San Jose State. The Wyoming game is on Friday, November 10th, and it's unfortunate that UNLV plays 3 of the better teams in the conference to end the season, and as a result, I see them losing their last 3 games to finish the year at 4-8 and 2-6 in the Mountain West. Now, as far as other games they could win, the Wyoming game is definitely a possible win. They are a good team, but they're not invincible. The Colorado State game can be a possible win, and the Hawaii game could be a possible win, and even the Vanderbilt game could be a possible win to some extent. But I think it's possible that they could win 2 out of those 4 games to get to bowl eligibility. Although I don't think that's gonna happen. So I think UNLV will finish 4-8 and 2-6 in Mountain West Conference, in 2-6 in Mountain West Conference action. All right, now we're gonna transition into the Utah State Aggies, who are head coached by Blake Anderson in his 3rd year at the helm. He has a 17-10 career record at Utah State. Last season was sort of a disappointment for Aggies fans as they finished 6-7, 5-3 in the Mountain West, and they also lost the First Responder Bowl to Memphis. Now, Utah State is definitely not considered one of the conference's best teams, but they can win some games, and they could be competitive throughout most of the season, especially this year. However, in order to do so, they got to survive a tough non-conference schedule that includes trips to Iowa, um, as also against UConn, and they also host James Madison as well. So it's a really tough non-conference schedule. They're also the second Mountain West team that plays Idaho State this season. Now, they draw on the top teams in the league play this year on their schedule. They got to play Fresno State, San Jose State, San Diego State, Boise State, and Air Force all in one season. So expect this to be somewhat of a rough campaign for Utah State, as they do not have that much talent to compete with any of those teams, in my opinion. Realistic expectations can be from anywhere from 5 to 7 wins. As far as how I see this season playing out, I think they'll lose to Iowa in the first game of the year. Then they'll beat Idaho State in their second to get to 1-1. They'll lose to Air Force on Friday, September 15th, to open up conference play, as they'll drop to 1-2. But then I think they'll win their next 2 games to get to 3-2. They'll beat James Madison at home, and then UConn on the road on September 30th. And then when the October slate hits, that's when things sort of get hit hard. I think they could lose to Colorado State for sure, and I think they will lose to the Rams. And then I think they'll also drop another Friday game against Fresno State at home. And then on October the 21st, I think they'll lose to San Jose State on the road. So they're already 3-5 heading into the bye week. And then coming out of the bye week to start off the November slate, the do-or-die November slate, I see them losing right away to San Diego State on November the 4th. I don't think that'll be a great contest for them at all. Then I see them beating Nevada and New Mexico in the middle to late portions of November, but that one loss in the middle to Boise State on November 11th will ruin their chances to get to a bowl game. So I see Utah State finishing 5-7 and 2-6 in Mountain West Conference play this year. Now, they're not going to be an extremely terrible ball club. I think they could squeeze out a few more wins, especially looking at their schedule. I definitely look at that Colorado State game as one of them. Maybe the game against Air Force or San Jose State could also result in wins. I don't know. So it is possible they could get extra wins and get to a bowl game again. I just think that they're a little bit thin compared to the other teams in the conference that they got to play against in order to get there. It's going to be a rough year for Utah State, in my opinion, and I don't see them getting to the bowl season at all. But they're not going to be a terrible team. They're going to struggle, but they're going to remain competitive in a lot of their games this season. So I see them finishing 5-7. It'll be a rough year for Blake Anderson and his crew, but they're not going to be absolutely terrible. So 5-7 and 2-6 overall for Utah State. We will transition to our last team we're going to talk about. All right, now finally the last team in the Mountain West alphabetically is the Wyoming Cowboys, who are coached by Craig Bohl. Craig Bohl's in his 10th year as the Wyoming head coach, and he has a record of 52 wins and 26 losses since taking over the program. Last season was a decent year. I'm sure it wasn't anything special for Wyoming fans, but it ended in a decent way. They started they went 7-6 last year, but they were able to get to a bowl game. Unfortunately, they lost the thrilling Arizona Bowl to Ohio, which was broadcasted on Barstool Sports, that game was pretty fun to watch. I actually watched that game, and it went right down to the wire. I believe Ohio won in overtime. But they went 5-3 in the Mountain West, and Wyoming should be primed to be one of the conference's better teams. However, they have a slew of tough non-conference games this season. They got to host Texas Tech and Appalachian State, and then they also have to go to Texas on the road. They avoid San Jose State, but they have to play Fresno State, Air Force, and Boise State this season. So it's going to be a really, really tough schedule for Wyoming. But I think they'll be okay. I think they have enough talent on both sides of the ball so where they can become a pretty good team this season. I think that they're going to be a pretty solid team. All right, once again, I had to cut the audio recording off, so I'll just continue what I was saying. So, they'll be a solid team, and they'll definitely be right in the race for the Mountain West Conference come November. As far as the season plays out, I see them losing 2 of their first 3 games to Texas Tech and Texas, which aren't that surprising. But then I see them picking up a win against Portland State on September the 9th. And then after the Texas game, I see them picking up a couple more wins against Appalachian State on the 23rd of September, and then against New Mexico on the 30th of September. So, they'll open up conference play with an easy win over New Mexico. Then they will lose the next 2 games to Fresno State and Air Force before the bye week, which they have on the week of the 21st of October. So, they're going to start the season off 3-4 before the bye week. But then I see them closing out the season on a 5-game winning streak. I think they'll beat Boise State and prevent them from going undefeated in conference play. I'm sure they'll get by both Colorado State and UNLV on Friday nights, and then they'll take down Hawaii and Nevada during the last 2 games of the season. Wyoming has a pretty good advantage when it comes to their schedule, and that they don't have to play any of the best teams of the conference at the end of the season. So they have enough cushion at the end of their schedule, where they do play some pretty bad teams or teams that aren't supposed to be good. They do play 4 teams that they're considered better than, and I think that'll help them out in the long run, and that'll help them get to at least an 8-win season. Personally, I think 8 wins is the max this team could hit. Maybe they could get 9 wins. Maybe they can upset Fresno State or Air Force. Maybe they could beat Texas Tech too, because Texas Tech is a pretty underrated ball club, but again, they're not like anything that's ridiculously crazy. So I don't want to throw those definitely out. I definitely don't want to throw any of those out. The Texas game on September 16th can just be forgotten about because they'll lose that game. I think they will lose that game. But overall, I think that Wyoming is solid. I think they're going to finish with an 8-4 record and a 6-2 mark in the Mountain West. I just personally think that they're going to be a pretty good team, and the schedule later on during the latter portions of the season definitely helped their cause. So I have Wyoming going 8-4 and 6-2 in the Mountain West. All right, that is going to do it for our Mountain West Conference predictions. Just to recap, these are my final projected standings. So in the top 2 spots, I have Boise State and San Diego State tying for first place with a 7-1 record. Then I see Air Force and Wyoming being tied for 3rd place at a 6-2 mark. Fresno State will be all alone in 5th place at 5-3. Then I see 2 teams tying for 6th as Hawaii and San Jose State finish the conference season at 4-4. Colorado State will finish 8th at 3-5. Utah State and UNLV will finish tied for 9th with a 2-6 mark. Then I see Nevada finishing 11th in the conference with a 1-7 record. And then for the 2nd straight year, I see New Mexico finishing in dead last place with the winless conference record at 0-8. As far as my Mountain West Championship game prediction is concerned, I have Boise State beating San Diego State in the Mountain West Conference Championship game, which the Broncos will host. I think, looking back at my San Diego State slide, they lose. San Diego State loses to Boise State in my predictions on the 22nd of September, which means that in the Mountain West title game, Boise State will have the home field advantage for that because they beat San Diego State in their stadium in the head-to-head matchup. So I think Boise State, I think this is their year for them to finally reach the top of the conference and get back to dominating the conference. To correct myself, they have been dominating the conference for a while, but they just haven't gotten the breaks that they've needed to become Mountain West champions. However, I think Fresno State, with the loss of a lot of their key players and Wyoming not being really on Boise State's level, I think they're gonna have a chance. I think the only 2 legitimate teams that have a chance at preventing Boise State from getting to that conference title are San Diego State and Air Force, but I don't see Boise. They might struggle to those 2 teams, but I think they'll still beat those 2 teams, and I think they'll beat San Diego State twice. So I have Boise State beating San Diego State in the Mountain West Conference Championship, and that's going to be the conclusion of this video. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Tell me, who do you have winning the Mountain West Conference title this year? It should be a fun discussion in the comment section. Please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and keep checking out this channel. I have a lot of content coming out, and I should be posting a couple more videos over the course of this week. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and take care.